Hello, everyone. Welcome to Charm Persons. Tonight is going to be a much happier vibe than the last five Wednesday nights. That's right. We did this for 5 weeks in a row. That's crazy.
Yeah, feels like
didn't feel like it.
Yeah, no, it really didn't. So welcome to the talkback for The Remains. If you're tuning in and you don't know what The Remains is, you can still watch. You might not know a lot of what's going on, but it might be. It will
if
be
you know about The Last of Us.
Yeah, exactly. So, we are Charm Persons. We are a channel that does tabletop RGB actual play streams. And The Remains was a long shot, as we call them, a multiple session one shot, set in a homebrewed system based in the world of The Last of Us. And that is what The Remains was. Before we get into The Remains and the story and everything like that, I want to introduce the rest of my cast, and also just kind of I want you to talk about what your experience is with the game The Last of Us, and what you knew before going into this long shot. Obviously, for some of you, don't go into extreme detail because you could talk for hours. So with that being said, Emily, as a person who is probably the least familiar with The Last of Us coming into this, you played Jenna Baker. This is Emily Kipp. And just talk about what you knew about The Last of Us before you came in.
I had watched a couple different people play through parts of it, enough so that I had a really good idea of like the plot and that it was a good narrative game because I wanted to watch people play it. And I love people who love it, and so I just like heard about it a lot, but I've never actually played the game.
Gotcha. But did you know of like the general story? Like did you know that it was like a fungal infection that sent the world into an apocalypse and stuff like that?
Yeah, I knew all the like basics.
Okay. Cool. All right. So next, Angie Forshee, who played Morgan Donaldson. Have you ever heard of The Last of Us?
No. So I actually, when you asked me to play this game initially, I was like, what is that? And then you
and what's that on your arm?
Not to play it.
And then what's that on your arm?
No, I am a big fan of The Last of Us. It was actually it was the first video game that I ever played when I got my own PlayStation 4. I had played like PS2. I had like gone over to friends' houses and played stuff, but I got a PS4 specifically because somebody said you need to play The Last of Us. And it took me 2 years to play.
Oh, wow.
Because I had to keep stopping, and then I like took a prolonged break because it was like affecting my sleep because I was like having nightmares. And so I had to get better at playing like PlayStation, like hand-eye coordination. So I like got Horizon Zero Dawn at around the same time and was like, okay, cool, open world, like I can like practice and like run away and then come back and run away and come back. So I got better at mechanics of actually playing like a PlayStation.
I love
that. But then I went back to The Last of Us, and I think I've played it and part 2 at least like 3 to 6 times through, depending on which one it is.
Amazing. And well, we'll get to it later. And then last but not least, our special frequent guest, Michael Brigance, who played Zachariah Williams-Gavin, probably the longest name we've had in a D&D in a storyline. What was your experience with the game before you joined?
Oh boy, I'll try to be really concise about this. So I have such a vivid memory of this thing. It's such an impactful game on my life. So the game came out pretty much right after I finished my freshman year of college. I was at home, and as I've been playing video games pretty my entire life. Specifically, I'm a PlayStation fanboy, ride or die. It's the superior console. We all know this. It just is. And I mean, they win all Game of the Year awards. We're not going to get into that. So I remember for some reason, because I watch like E3 every year, I'm always extremely conscious about like what is coming up like for the next year in terms of games. And for some reason, this wasn't like on my radar. I was a huge fan of Uncharted, but for some reason, like Last of Us just wasn't on my radar. And I remember the IGN review came out and it was a perfect 10. And again, summer had just started and I didn't have anything to do. And so I was like, I'll go down. The game came out that day. I was like, sure, I'll go down and pick up the game. And it was just an instant love of that game. And I mean, I devoured it, unlike Angie. Absolutely devoured it.
Same.
And yeah, it's been my favorite game since then. And then part 2 came out and that became my favorite game. I rearranged the furniture in my tiny studio apartment to like get the best like seating angle when I played part 2. That is how much this series means to me. So
Amazing.
it's been a big deal for me for a very long time.
Well, that's great. Well, then I'm glad, we were able to do this, and we'll jump into kind of like what it was like for you. But my limited experience is, or not limited, my personal experience, I guess I should say, is somewhat more limited. I played the first game when it came out, played it, beat it, loved it, but it actually didn't really... I don't know, I was playing a lot of video games at the time. I think it didn't... I mean, I loved it. I thought it was a very good game, but it didn't necessarily, like, stay with me. It was just, like, I remember that being a good game. And then... I think... Did the remaster or did The Last of Us Part 2 come out first?
Remaster.
Yeah, so the remaster came out, and I played that, and I was like... I think I was just kind of older and was able to appreciate it more. And I was like, oh wow, this is art in a video game form. And ended up not finishing that for some reason, and then gotten into Last of Us 2, and then I stopped playing Last of Us 2 because I was having so much fun playing Last of Us 2 that I was like, okay, I need to do all of this from the beginning. So I went back and I did the remaster. So I've also played both games all the way through at least twice, but like various starts and stops here and there. So that was my experience. I loved the world, so I had this idea to throw together a long shot set in the world of The Last of Us. And luckily, I had 3 good friends who were willing to join me on that journey. And The Remains was born. We actually did a one-shot of this.
I was gonna say, yeah.
We did do
like it was like a play test.
Yeah, we did basically like a play test. It was the first ever. I mean, this is just a bastardization of D&D that I came up with. And Angie and Emily were both in that. Michael was not. But luckily Michael was able to join us for the long shot. And so what I want to start with, just to give us a little bit of structure, is I'll briefly say what the story of The Remains is first. So, the story of The Remains takes place 25 years after the initial outbreak, and our players are nowhere near where Joel and Ellie were. They are in the smoky Great Mountains of Tennessee, and they're in a fictional location known as the Blue Valley. And in this Blue Valley, there's a campgrounds turned into settlement. And in this settlement lived multiple people, specifically 3 of which being Jenna Baker, who Emily played, who was a local from nearby who went to this camp as a child. And grew up to kind of be security and a runner, a person who would leave and go and get supplies, not an actual runner. I never even really I never even thought about the fact that I had called them runners. But we can get into that later. And so that's who Jenna Baker was, and she had also come with her best friend, Morgan Donaldson, when they were young, who was played by Angie Forshee, who now, when we found her at the beginning of this story, had a husband and 2 kids, and was living a very like suburban mom kind of life in this settlement in the apocalypse. And then another character played by Zachariah Williams-Gavin was the veterinarian trained turned chief doctor of this settlement, who had tendrils in places but was more of a loner than the other 2 for sure. And this group of people came together to make this community thrive. The events of the Remains started out episode 1 with a beheaded body coming into the camp and one of the main characters' husbands being kidnapped, and the journey to fight against this group who did this by going and trying to diverting a horde, and then finding out a bunch of drama there, and then going actually to the superstore, and that the people who committed these atrocities were having their headquarters. We found people who we thought were dead. We found people who we didn't even know existed. Family members were reunited, and eventually, mainly, everyone made it. And was able to get back to the Blue Valley campgrounds, and so that was the story of the Remains. Just a brief, you should, if you're watching this, you should know what happened. So my first question is for the players. The first question that I have for you is: we had a lot of really awesome scenes in this series. We had more. It was the heaviest role play thing I think Charmed Persons has done, and we had a lot of like intense role playing scenes and not a lot of like actually like rolling of the dice and combat. So we were able to really discover a lot about these characters and really jump into conversations with how they felt about people. And yet, I feel like there was so much unexplored in the short amount of time that we had. So all of that to say, my first question is for you: is what are some of the moments or conversations that you wanted to have that it didn't fit in the right feel? It didn't feel right in the moment, or it didn't. We just didn't get to it in general. Like, what are some conversations, some moments that you wanted to have?
I'll go. Just the first thing that came to mind is it was sort of in the chaos of like a big fight. So I feel like Jenna and her mom didn't get a whole lot of like actual detailed like reconciliation. Like I feel like we got it story-wise and there was a lot implied, but that would have been kind of fun to explore given a little bit more time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Jenna was able to kind of have that, a lot of those like family reunited moments, like through Taylor,
Tori,
and which was a family member that Jenna didn't even know existed. But yeah, we didn't really get to see much, really at all, between Jenna and Carol. So yeah, that would have been nice to see too. Anybody? What is it? What does everybody else?
I just feel like so many. I feel like Morgan did a lot of like, oh no, everything's fine. Everything's cool. I shouldn't be here. Yeah, a lot of repression. And like, as a person who, not saying that I'm repressed as like a person, but like as a person now who is very much like, I do a lot of work at creating safe spaces for people, and like I like my work outside of this is kind of that. In this world, it was very bizarre to play a character like that, and so not being able to have those conversations, or trying to keep the peace and keep the positivity in a world that is just like intrinsically
Devastating.
booked.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I had any conversations. Like,
Yeah, I know.
I
Well,
think
and
a
also,
lot of my
sorry, no, go ahead.
no, I mean that's just I think a lot of my time like interacting with people. Like I tried to like talk to
Mm-hmm.
Zach, but like it wasn't really talking. It was
Yeah.
like, you know, it was like, hey, what's up, bro? Like, or like, hey, do you want to come have this picnic with us so we can forget about our problems and like not really
The fact that we had
interact with reality?
a picnic after a beheading
Yeah,
is a
and it was
nuts
like-
thing.
Yeah.
It was for the kids.
Yeah. Well, and you know, in asking you this question, Angie, I think, you know, it reminds me of something that I've said off stream. I don't know if I've ever said it on stream, which is the fact that, I mean, I definitely have said it off stream, that Morgan, arguably, her status A to status B, she gets worse.
Yeah.
Her life gets arguably worse at the end of the Remains, whereas, you know, flips the opposite side of the coin, Zachariah's gets a lot better.
Yeah.
Jenna's gets a lot more complicated, I would say. And maybe a little bit worse, but also better in other ways, you know, so it's complicated.
Mhm.
But with Morgan, you know, it's almost a shame because it feels like in the last episode, or what would be the next episode, would be the beginning of Morgan's story. Is like kind of what it feels like to me. Like it feels like after this all happened, like maybe this whole Remains was the beginning of Morgan's story, but Morgan's story is far from over.
Yeah.
And in speaking of that, and speaking out of like, you know, this same conversation of missed convos, and also me feeling like Morgan was just starting to find herself kind of at the end of this. I think it's also, you know, elephant in the room. It's a bit of a shame that we couldn't really explore more of what was going on between Jenna and Morgan, and it was something that kind of had to be discussed in the epilogue. What are your thoughts on that? What talk about Jenna and Morgan. Talk about Jorgen here. What are your thoughts?
Jorgen. I think it's
The fairy from Fairly Odd Parents. Remember Jorgen von Strangle?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Strangle. Well, funnily enough, I think after I don't remember if it was during while we were doing the epilogue or like directly after it was. Emily and I messaged each other privately on Discord, literally the same thing. That was I typed Morgan has been in love with Jenna since they were kids, and Emily said Jenna has been in love with Morgan since they were kids. And so both of us were kind of like,
now that we're out of this, I have did you as Angie really not know from day one that that's what was happening?
Oh, I was always playing it. I was always playing.
You knew what was happening.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I didn't tell Emily.
Well, because Emily and I talked before we started at all. I knew that Jenna was in love with Morgan. Before we even started, I knew that was a thing. And there was parts of me that I was like, I can't tell if Angie really doesn't know that Jenna's in love with Morgan.
No, I said in my like when I wrote like notes to myself about Morgan, like I don't know if it was like, you know, this is a fucked up world. Like this is the way that love expresses itself now is so different than it would be maybe in the, well, I don't know, Zach and fucking Derek over here and their fucking little happy little meh. But
Angie's face every time two gay men were
no, but that was like part of it too, is like the reactions that Morgan had to Derek and Zach, and like I think until she really like settled for Wes. Sorry.
For Wes.
But like she thought that that's what it was. She thought that was what she was supposed to do, and was her means. Like she knew she wanted to continue this society. She knew she wanted that was her bigger role to play.
I mean, she's also a young girl from Tennessee in 2013. Like, you know,
Yeah,
like she,
and-
like her life was
and
viewed in a
10,
certain way.
like-
And 10, yeah.
She was like 10 or 11 when this all happened. So having grown up and like the only person really that she has outside of her family is, you know, Jenna, who was doing Jenna's thing. And, you know, these boys who are close to her age, like, of course she's going to be like, okay, it's going to be one of you. Like, great.
Yeah.
Until she sees, like, I would like to think that in like the time between us getting to, and Jenna, tell me how you feel about this. In the time of them getting to the settlement, to essentially the time where her and Wes start to become like something more than just like the friends.
Mm-hmm.
Morgan was probably a little bit changed when Jenna started, you know, coming out or like experiencing same-sex relationships, because you were like bisexual.
Yeah,
right?
We canonically established in episode 1 that she had relationships with both Sean and Vicky.
Yeah. And we had, I think you asked me that at one point, Angie, and we had said that they had never, like, Jenna and Morgan never had the conversation about Jenna's sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
They just talked about who she was dating.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together.
But then, you know, fucking Zach rolls up, and then, like, Derek, who, you know, theoretically
was an option.
Morgan and Jenna had been friends with,
yeah,
you know, this whole time, and then suddenly, like, having, you know, a love interest there and seeing that, like, I think Morgan was just like, well, okay.
I doubt that Derek was out as young and gay before Zach showed up. Like, it was probably Zach showing up that Derek.
In
my head,
that's interesting.
In my head, that's kind of what was happening, is that Derek was just kind of like very classically, like, just didn't really show any interest in anybody, and then Zach showed up, and then it was, you know, rest is in the books. So I mean, okay, well, I guess, you know, we'll probably continue to talk about Jenna and Morgan, but I guess this is kind of a natural transition to you, Michael. What are some conversations, some moments that you wish you could have experienced on stream with Zach?
Man, yeah. By the way, apologies in advance if I'm rambling and long-winded. I've never done the talk like this before, and I talk a lot in general. So
no apologies necessary. This is what we're on the just chatting category.
That's okay, great.
So just chat about it.
There was one that thankfully I was able to kind of warm in at the epilogue, which was I really did want that talk to Morgan about why Zach was so distant.
I did like that was able
thank
to happen
God,
the
honestly,
entire
because
time.
I, as Angie, started being like, Michael doesn't like playing with me. Oh my God.
No, it was something, and I messaged Zach about this like when we started, about like this is why this is why and I mentioned it again, like I was trying to cram it into that epilogue, but I think it was really hard for him, like looking at Morgan have this life that it's weird that like Morgan had these like almost like jealous feelings about Zach and Derek because Zach was feeling
it's life.
He was having those kind of same thoughts about Morgan because he saw that relationship that she had with her kids, and he just really, really wanted to be. He wanted to really be a dad, but he also really thought that Derek would be a really good dad, and that was really hard on him. So that was like the main thing, and there were like I guess little things along the way. One thing that we didn't get to that I did kind of wish that we could do is that I wanted Zach to show Maggie Little Lady the horse, because that is the full horse big guy.
Yeah, that would.
And I would have liked, and I would have liked just like and I'm sure like that was like one of the first things that they did the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would have like honestly we could have made, and maybe we should have, but the epilogue could have been one whole episode.
That's the thing is there were so many like little things that would have been.
Well, I've said this so Zach and I are subsequently doing this playthrough on his Twitch channel, but like I constantly maintain that I would play like an open world, like missions based game that just takes place in Jackson. Where you're just like, you create a character that lives in Jackson and you just live in the world. Like, yeah.
And you have to like go
Sign me
on
up.
runs and supply
Yeah,
the camp,
and you can like level up if you like it could
Are
be.
you listening, game developer?
Naughty dog.
It could
Naughty
be
dog.
like an XCOM kind of a thing where you go out with the
Exactly,
team, and if that person
yes.
dies, they're done. Because XCOM is like you're with the squad fighting
XCOM,
aliens,
But
and
as
if
like,
if your teammate dies, they're just gone from the game.
that would be dope. That would be really
Yeah.
dope. Okay, well, let's pause on the story talk here for a moment because that's a very good segue to the actual system. So, what I homebrewed for this was I used, just rules from multiple different tabletop role-playing games. I guess it's mainly based off of 5e. I gave all of the people 5 stats instead of 6. They had muscle, agility, sense, communication, and cunning as their 5 stats. And then just like D&D, those stats informed abilities that they then had or skills. The only difference is everyone had the same numbers in their stats, just spread out in different ways. So everyone had a 4 stat, a 3 stat, a 2 stat, a 1 stat, and a 0 stat. Everybody had those stats, and depending on the skin that they had, Jenna Baker played a scrappy skin, so high agility, high sense. Zach was the book smart skin, high cunning, better at healing. Morgan was actually a new skin that wasn't available at the playtest called the Protector, which was something that we, which ended up being pretty vital multiple times.
Yeah.
Yes.
As
That not today bonus
the not
action,
today bonus
like,
action was nuts.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
frustrating that I can't use it whenever I want, which is something that I need to talk to you about.
And then they all had an AC, which was relatively low, and HP, which was everybody's HP was 15.
Mhm.
And
Unless you got your finger cut off, and then it was 13.
Yeah. It would eventually, a few weeks it'd be back up. Actually, probably a few days it'd be back up to. But that was another thing. They could only heal through the heal kits. The new things that were like I don't know if I based them off of anything. I just kind of came up with them. Was like, well, obviously I based it off of the crafting system in Last of Us. That's a huge thing in the video game, and I tried to translate that as best as I can by having characters roll search checks, and then those search checks determined how many supplies that they got: sharp object, adhesive, rags, and alcohol were the 4. I didn't have explosives, which I think is the only one I didn't have. I think there's only 5 materials you can get.
Well, you had the oh no, like explosives as a separate. I was like, we had Molotovs, but that's
Yeah, but the like the explosives to create the mines and create stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a basic overview of the system. What did you guys think of the system itself? Any thoughts?
Really great.
Terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah.
The nat 20, both headshot and bite were really stressing me out.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, I guess that
think it
was
was good,
another
though.
thing to explain. All of the enemies had 3 sets of AC. The lowest they would get hit but take half damage. The middle chunk they would get hit, take regular damage, and then the highest chunk would just be a flat out headshot and they'd be killed. And if one of the characters rolled a natural 20, that was automatically a headshot kill. Which we found out, the big bad of the season, Nick Colton, who is the mastermind behind everything, gets killed with a one-off headshot, which is
Not killed because you...
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Or what? Spoilers.
Who knows what's gonna happen?
We're talking about the entire
I
time.
No, yeah. So at the end, and I told Emily after this too, I was like, no matter what happened, unless he was like his head was cut off or something, Nick was coming back. And it's just it was still a really awesome moment in the episode, and really like shortened that last combat. Like something really could have went down. Clickers, I actually initially I wanted Clickers to have 2 headshots, but that ended up feeling a bit too hard for me, and so I made it that just bloaters had the 2 headshot thing, where you could roll headshots on them, but it would take 2 to take them down. And then also briefly, Michael mentioned it, there was a bite system that was if the infected rolled a natural 20 if they were a runner, a 19 or 20 if they were a clicker, or an 18, 19, or 20 if they were a bloater, we would then roll on the percentile die. If it was a 20% or below for a runner, 30% or below for a clicker, 40% or below for a bloater, they would get bitten. And then we would re-roll that die again with the same percentages, and if it was the lower, they would be bitten in a place that couldn't be popped off of them. And if it was the higher, they got bit in a place that could be, which is canonically something that is debated about. In The Last of Us, there's like a whole Reddit thread about it, about is this something that actually could work? And the answer is we don't know. It's not officially said whether or not. So I made the choice that it could be.
I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, I think it just...
I mean, for the mechanics of this,
Yeah, exactly. For the mechanics of this long shot. And I also, there was an homage... there was a little bit of an homage there to The Walking Dead, which is a show that I'm a very big fan of. I actually dropped off a few... If you're a real big fan of The Walking Dead, watching The Remains, you'll notice a few references to The Walking Dead. One of them being the questions that the runners ask to people when they meet them. How many infected have you killed? How many people have you killed? And why? That's an homage to The Walking Dead. Another one actually was when Sylvia died and she continued talking after being shot in the head. That was something that really blew my mind and drove me crazy about happening in The Walking Dead to Denise, who Morgan Donaldson's portrait happened to look a lot like. And so that was a little bit of an homage too. Anyway, I love Apocalyptic Infected.
I mean, she was based on Merritt Weaver.
See, so there you go.
I literally, in that portrait maker, wrote Merritt Weaver Apocalypse.
Oh, you wrote Merritt Weaver?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
I
then,
messaged Angie that. I was like, you fully just... That's just Merritt Weaver.
I find it hard to believe
Weaver.
that you didn't just say Chris Evans when you
did
yours.
That was never put on stream. That was never
public
information.
We're gonna put it on stream though. I'm gonna put it
on the
Instagram. Yeah.
Put this right now.
Because at some point, Derek was Chris Evans.
At some point, the initial
Did
Derek
you type
portrait
Chris
that
Evans?
I made. I really didn't.
Because it just was Chris Evans.
Well, I think here's my thing
really
is
was.
because I think with some keywords, he's just like the baseline of confident, attractive, guy with dark hair. I think that's
sure
probably
AI did base it off of Chris.
Because they do pull, because if you do certain things in the Mid Journey, they some of them do tend to look pretty similar if you keep the same wording. Like a lot of you have to get really particular to avoid some of them looking different. But I get the the initial Derek portrait was uncanny, and so I was like, this feels weird, I need to change it.
Okay, so you enjoyed the mechanics of the game. Is there anything that you think should be altered, or any additions that you had? I know that Michael discussed one off stream that he thought about, which was the addition of the books, right? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, in the game you can find these survival guides that allow you to craft new things or allow your existing abilities to just be better, and I think that would be a good alternative as opposed to leveling up. You can either learn how to craft the remote detonation, or maybe your shivs work on a 19 instead of the way that I had the baseball bat. That if you roll high, it does that stuff. So I think that would be a good alternative.
I think it's a great idea,
up.
and I'll say the same thing that I said when you said it the first time, which is I also think that it would be good it would be cool if these books could not only give you new items to craft or something like that, but another way that this system worked was that they had a movement, they had an action that they could do, and every character came with specific bonus actions that they could do. And it was only those things that they can do on a bonus action. Like sometimes in D&D you can like coerce something else to be a bonus action, but it was like only these like 4 or 5 things. And I think that having a book teach you a new bonus action, like a new ability, would be pretty cool too. Cool. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything else? Yeah.
Well, I just am kicking myself that I was the one that texted you that one day and was like, can we get bit in this game? And you were like, that's a great question. Here's how this would work.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. And
Angie,
then I was the one that got bit.
In the first session, that bite system didn't exist.
Yeah.
And then Angie just messaged me and said, what would happen if we were to get bit? And I was like, oh yeah, I should come up with something for that. And then I just, in the moment, chatting Angie, came up with what the bite system is, and I like it. I was like, I like it too, but I was like, oh yeah, that's really like a rarity. And then I was like, oh shit, it's actually a little bit easier than thought. I do have one that I really I liked for our game, but I think especially if you want to get to like a greater combat difficulty or like add specificity to combat, I think you came up with it on the spot of like the way that you can stealth. And like you said that if we got up on the roof and if we could roll high enough on our stealth checks, I think it would be cool to like go back through and like tidy that up a bit of like, if you roll a stealth check from this to this, you have to do the stealth and you have to do a shot. Or if you roll it in that middling range, you can get it, but you only get a lower hit on the like DC or whatever it is. Yeah, like maybe you take some damage because they fight back. Or something
maybe you
take
some damage, and you have to. And then if it's like a nat 20 or whatever, you just like out clean or something. Because I thought that was really cool, but I was like, oh, it would be really interesting in these like more tense moments.
Bless you, Wanda.
That's Daisy.
Oh, is that Daisy?
Wanda's asleep. Don't you bring my daughter into this.
Daisy's just laying on my feet sneezing.
By the way, it's not just a human sitting at her feet. That's a cat. I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's because it was something I literally just came up with at the moment. And so I think that would be a really good thing too. And I was thinking, as you were saying that, I also think that I gave you too much ammo. I think ammo needed to be more scarce because I don't think ammo was ever a worry once. You also didn't come through a lot of combat, but ammo was just really never a worry.
Also, I will say I did have I was hoarding ammo. And I had about I was close to my 20 max.
Yeah.
Situation. I would say I would classify this game combat-wise as if we had chosen easy or story mode.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? So I wonder
in terms of resources,
In terms of resources.
Yeah.
And I liked it because I think that the story was what we all kind of wanted. But that would be another thing too conversationally is if you do have players that do kind of want to get into that heavy combat and heavy role play, let's choose hard on the hard, grounded on the.
That's a good idea. Yeah. The only thing I think that I did not enjoy about the system that I want to rework is the way that the initiative is.
That's what I was gonna bring up.
Yeah, it was a bit confusing. There's something about me that likes the idea that the enemies, once you dwindle them down, get to act a lot more. Because it doesn't because then you can't just all gang up on one. It's it becomes there's something that I like about that, but it also feels unpolished. And then also clearly just having you guys decide who's gonna go is not a thing that is it was just for the sake of time, if anything else.
It worked out sometimes, especially on those ones that was oh, this person just attacked you, or this
exactly. That's what I was thinking about when I created it. Yeah.
Well, and I wonder if it could even be on the first round of combat, it sort of goes that way. So that in character, you can be like, I really think I would act quickly, or I think, and then it like
And then it
sticks
just
that way
stays
for the
that
rest of the
way.
turn order.
Yeah.
But it's kind of flexible so that you as the GM can be like, actually, I know your turn is next, but we're just going to flip these for this
Actually,
one because
you know
just got
what?
attacked.
Going off of that, Emily, that's a great idea. I think we could take the time to eat, like, at the beginning of every round, so the first round is what you just said, kind of discovering it in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it gets to the second round, you have 3 options. You need to just keep that same order. You can quickly tell me and decide the new order, like ahead of time, tell me the new order.
Like at the top of that round.
Yeah, or you can roll for a completely random order. And you would have those 3
like
options
every
at the top of
initiative.
every round.
That'd be interesting.
That's a little involved.
Let's try it. Let's try it next time now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we should. Yeah, why not try it?
The only other thing that I would suggest, and I have no answer to this, was I would be interested in incorporating other abilities besides agility into combat, because everything was based on, it was everything plus your agility, and I think it'd be interesting if like what else could, in the way that, not to D&D it, but it's like, well, if your sorcerer, your charisma is going to be what really helps you out, and you can have like a dagger with dex, but like just stuff like whatever the I have no answer for this.
Yeah, no,
but
I know
think
it's what I struggled with, but I agree.
Finding
you
other
did-
alternatives to agility.
So to just go off of what Michael's saying, like in my protector bonus action, you did have one where it was like I could add my sense stat to my damage.
Yeah, so
And it
like
was
maybe
like a-
And I
maybe
had
So, like,
know
things
that I
like
had know
that,
the
yeah.
enemy that I could.
Yeah.
Which
I had
is
know
like
the
your
enemy,
But like if we did it into like
maybe
rather
making
than
that like a permanent
spells.
thing.
Yeah, making it like if Morgan uses her hunting knife, but she has really low agility, what would be like another way that she could use her hunting knife, or like what would provide her a little more strength?
Yeah, like if it was like maybe like the baseball bat was like done through might, or
well, that's the thing is like, and that's the way it was for the one shot. But I just like when we were like, there was just I didn't have everything completely written down, and so I didn't. But like the baseball bat in the one shot was brawn based, and so yeah, like I think having just like I think having that can be solved by one, just different styles of weapons.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
2 for the stuff like Know Thy Enemy, or what was yours, Angie? The adding the sense, what was it called?
It wasn't.
I know pain.
I know
I know
pain.
pain. Yes, thank you. I was like,
making
martyr,
those like
not
making
today.
those like feats that you have that would be like a permanent buff, like
Yeah.
not a limited thing, and then coming
Yeah.
up with something else that would like be even better or something like that, so
Yeah.
that you're all still rolling around +3, +4 for your shit, but it's like So I agree with that too. Cool. Okay. Well.
What?
For the penultimate thing that we're gonna do here, for this talk back, I just kind of want to, because I just know that we're gonna talk a lot. I know we're gonna have a lot to say. Well, my first question is, what do you as players have any questions for me as the GM about the story? About any like a secret behind something, a reason behind something, or a what if behind something? And if you don't, you don't. That's totally fine. But I just want to open it up to that first. So, do you have any questions for me that are like, I wondered this about the plot?
Oh, something that I wondered. This is more like just a general like what happened. We didn't really get to see the porters whenever we got back to
That's true.
Yeah.
the campground.
I truly had absolutely no malicious intent behind the porters. They were going to be there and just immediately like be a part of that community. I just that was my.
So
goal for
we could
porters.
imagine that they were like hiding in the the barn or the mess hall.
Yes.
Like barricaded in.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, when that fight was going down, I was like, we have two former fireflies. Where are they?
I know,
Yeah.
I had to. It honestly, it wasn't until you started yelling for people that I was like, oh fuck, why wouldn't they come out? Why wouldn't they just come out and help them?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, they barricaded it really heavily, and they're like, it's taking
Yeah.
a while to like.
I mean, combat's fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Any other questions about the story or the plot?
I mean, I think given more time, I probably would have asked more about like Jenna's family's journey from, you know, where they were to where they ended up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing planned for that.
Great.
I just knew. I mean, I would have decided it in the moment, you know.
Of course.
But I mean, I knew that they were down in Georgia when Nick went down there. They were already down there because of a business trip. At least that's what. And then we discovered on stream that there was a miscommunication.
Yeah.
there.
Well, no,
okay.
and
That's what happened.
I actually went back through and I was like, yeah, we did never specify, but like I kind of liked that more because why would my parents have just like stolen this child? Do you know what I mean? Like there had
and not
been
tried
a
to find
reason-
them at all, or like
not tried to find them at all, or not just been like, hey, we're gonna hole up in our home until your parents get, you know what I mean? So there was
Yeah.
like more of a stakes and sense of responsibility from my mom and dad of like, shit, we're responsible for this child. Like
in my
cell phones don't
mind,
work, like-
yeah, exactly. Like in my mind, Jenna had been spending the night at Morgan's for the past few days, and was like, like maybe tomorrow they were gonna come home, and like, you know, all that.
And
stuff.
that makes the most sense.
Yeah. So I knew that they were down there for that, and then when Nick came down, Nick like found Nick found the group that your parents were already in, and kind of like took over it. And then when he started like mentioning where he was from, your parents had that like connection and mentioned that they were from there, which is how Nick met your mom, and how like that happened. But like they didn't have any they knew like that was their home area, and so they like that was a reason for Nick to use them, because they like knew what was in that area, which is how they found the superstore. But they didn't think to know, like they didn't know where you were, you know.
Yeah, of course.
So they wouldn't have thought to like look, especially after 25 years, they wouldn't have thought to look for you at all. And not in the condition that they were in.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you know from the beginning that Maggie was alive and was going to come back?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay, because
the improv
was like,
the improv that I started, or like the improv decision that I made, was that the Porters knew Maggie. Originally, that wasn't going to be the case.
Okay.
And so you weren't going to be reunited with Maggie until you like got to the superstore or whatever. But I don't know, you were running into two fireflies. I would be like, I don't know. I think part of me also was like, it's episode 2. I want to like, I don't know. I want to just like, I want to drop some juicy. I want to drop something juicy,
tease.
you know?
You wanted to put me through some emotional trauma.
Exactly,
really
yeah.
early on.
And I wanted you to, because I was like,
he's gonna have to work for this.
because the reason why I decided that was because Michael reached out to me beforehand telling me about Maggie and telling me about what happened with her. And by the way, and this was something that Michael and I talked about off stream, I originally wrote her name down as Sarah for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
And so she was Sarah Williams for the longest time. And when he asked me, because Michael messaged me, he was like, by the way, like, do you know what happened with Maggie, or like blah blah blah. And I was like, who the fuck's Maggie? Like, who are you talking about?
who's Maggie?
I was like, oh, Sarah. Okay.
Sarah Maggie.
But the reason why I decided to do that is because you told a GM like me that you had a sister that you didn't know the whereabouts of. I figured you knew there was a pretty good chance something was going to happen with her in this.
Yeah.
And so because I knew that you knew that, I wanted to have that moment happen with the Porters so that you were like, oh, I guess this is the moment.
That's what I thought too. I was like, oh, he found
but
out.
I guess, but I guess this is my closure. Yeah, and so that's kind of like the red herring I was trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I did not think my parents were alive at all.
And that you had a sibling.
I didn't either.
I thought that maybe I would run into them as like infected, or I would find their bodies, or like I would confirm that they were dead. But I did not think I would find them.
I knew like that was all planned before the Longshot started. The only thing that I changed as we started was that Tori became more of a central character. Originally, what I had planned is that Tori was just going to be one of the people that randomly attacked you, and then you were going to kill them, and then you were going to like eventually find out.
Wow.
Oh
no! So them being at the RV when you showed up, that was in the moment. Well, not in the moment, but that was in that session behind the scenes in my brain decided.
Very
because cool. Originally they were going to be at the cave, and they were going to be like one of those people, and you were just going to fight them or like something. I don't know. And because of that, they weren't gonna like really know of your existence. Like it was so I like in order to make it more emotional, in order to give them more stakes, I also decided that like Carol had like told Tori about everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was. And sometimes I decide a lot of stuff in the moment sometimes, but
yeah.
And usually sometimes it's.
That's why I wanted to know. I was like, was it in the moment that Maggie was alive? Because of just the way that the narrative was going, because that red herring was like perfect in terms of like
it was,
you know, these two people
obviously it worked on me.
Yeah. The oh shit
okay moment. So speaking of oh shit moment, my second question then is just kind of an open question of what are some of your favorite moments of the Remains? What's some of the stuff that you just love that happened?
I loved starting Jenna's whole storyline with Wes. Yeah. I feel like it was sort of the side of her well-rounded story that I had thought about the least. And I feel like it just gave a good point of view of her relationship with him, and therefore her relationship to Morgan.
Yeah, and I thought it was a good introductory for people who didn't know the world to kind of see the world's these people are out on a supply run, things are scarce, they haven't found anything in a while. Kind of lead into the fact that there's still a life behind. He's talking about a wife and a birthday and kids, and so yeah, I just kind of thought it was a good overall scene to kind of kick it off.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of something that was in the behind in my brain, and I think I said it off stream after the session when we were we need to save it for the talk back, but we just couldn't.
Yeah, we did talk about
but it happened a couple times. Well, it happened at the beginning of the first session before Wes went missing, and then again at the end. And now that you know that both Emily and I were playing the same motivation,
the same game.
It was very, very hard. Just generally, I can't explain it, but anytime you and I would be role-playing Wes and Morgan, it was very hard to reciprocate you saying, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
But then with Jenna, it was so easy. It was the easiest thing in the world. And it was that first moment I remember, and I knew, you know.
But you're in character, you know.
Yeah, and that first moment when he's talking about going to help Brady in the morning, and is that okay? And Morgan's oh yeah, you got to do what you got to do, and he's well, I love you. I was I love you too, but not because, and it was so, it made me as a player be how do I feel about love?
Yeah.
What are those words, and why, and
I think you were just really in character, and I think you really made a discovery in character in that moment.
And I
Like, that was
haven't
an
acted like
in-character
that
discovery.
since college.
I mean,
Like,
same. I mean, that was something, just to kind of like,
Yeah.
that was something that, to answer the question for myself, and I talked to Michael about this a lot off stream, but it really, like, it's really scratched the acting part of my brain, and it's the thing about tabletop role-playing games that I love the most, the role-playing part, and I think, especially adults who have never seen a tabletop role-playing game actual play, or definitely never played a tabletop role-playing game, you hear the words roleplay, and like either you think of like something kinky and sexual, or you think of like, I don't know, like extreme social awkward nerdiness, and it's just kind of like, which, hey,
No,
no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
kind of commitment.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure they could kick my ass. But with the right people, with the right mindset, it really is it's just another medium for storytelling. It's just a medium for collaborative storytelling, and it's improv with a lot more rules, but in a good way. And it's just storytelling. It's just flat out storytelling, and that's something that I really enjoyed about this series, is that I really felt like we leaned into that aspect of tabletop games.
Yeah. Well, it has all the same vibe as like playing a really good session of like Monster Hearts. Like when we do the Monster Hearts thing.
It felt
like
very Monster Hearts like.
Yeah, it's more like you put yourself in this set of circumstances, and if you really know your character, because like I think Monster Hearts is where we got the skins model.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I based the skins idea off that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like a very simple character sheet.
Yes,
and
very simple.
It leaves a lot of room, but also is very specific.
Yes.
So it's like that happy medium, and I think that there is something so freeing about that. Is like I have my very few stats and my 3 little things that kind of dictate my character, and then from there I get to decide how I feel about Zach and Derek, and how I want to navigate my relationship with this fictional husband, and like these 2 kids, and this society that has been built. And it's like all of the best parts of improv without like who's the funniest.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's very true. Yeah, I mean, I just think that it's yeah, I agree with everything. I love it. I think it's great. Okay, so I have.
What about other favorite moments?
Yeah. So what about other? Yeah, please keep going.
I just realized, I was like, as Angie was talking, I realized, like, I think because I was I felt the most like isolated from the others, like, because Morgan and Jenna had such a relationship, and I was just hanging out. It was interesting that like my favorite moments were, not to get too real, were the ones that like I don't ever get to explore in my real life, because I'm an only child, and dating isn't a thing that I do, and so but like my favorite stuff was, not to be boring, but with everything with Derek.
Yeah.
But then I really loved like the car ride with Maggie.
Oh, that was great.
Like,
I loved
stuff like that.
I loved the car
Stuff
ride.
like that was just so great, because like that's nothing that I ever get to do.
Yeah.
And especially because like Zach is probably the closest to me that personality-wise that I've ever played before.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was going to say something on that too.
Yeah.
I think that there is something to say about the fact that as much as I love D&D and high fantasy, these are grounded characters that we as modern day humans have a lot in common with. And I think that really helps as well, kind of really dive in. Yeah, I mean, I had so many great moments. The initial reveal of Luke, the white-haired man.
That's my other one.
Oh my god.
I really felt proud of that one. That one was really cool.
You made me cry twice.
Yeah, I was gonna say
the whole Sean thing.
That was what I was gonna say, is like that was the there's always a moment, I feel like, in every Last of Us, like there's been a million, but like the two games, the way that the story goes is you're kind of like, here's the world and here are our stakes and la la la, we're doing it, we have a heist, oh shit. And like we didn't know Brady enough, or like we hadn't really gotten intertwined with Wes enough that like that was like our starting off point. That was like our Ellie moment where it's like, here's the task at hand.
That was the like,
and
holy
Sean,
shit. Yeah, like that was the like
Sean
Sarah
was
moment.
Sean was the Sarah moment, but also I would say the Sam moment where like you're
no,
doing
I'm saying,
your thing,
like,
you're blah blah blah.
like the beheaded, like the drastic change.
Oh
like
yeah,
that was the Sarah moment.
The Sarah moment,
and then the Sean was like Tess or something, like
Tess or Sam, or like
or
where
Sam,
you're just like, here's the thing, here's the we're going along, we're playing our little game, and then it's like, oh, the stakes just got higher, or like, oh, we just lost someone important. And I think like the whole group's reaction to that was one of my favorite like moments, because it was sad and I had to be like, this is a game, this is a game that we're playing. I didn't just lose a friend.
Yeah. And I didn't help by embedding a bunch of memories that you didn't know existed.
Oh my god.
It was perfect though. I mean, it's what would have been happening.
Yeah.
I think I messaged
Oh, go ahead.
I remember, like, I messaged all of you after episode 2. I was exhausted.
Yeah, me too.
I was so, I mean, it was an amazing session. It's all, they were all wonderful and I had so much fun. But after episode 2, I was just like, oh my god. Like, it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it was like just emotional trauma every night, but we had fun with it.
we were electing to go through trauma. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that moment as well, and I felt like it really grounded things. And yeah, I really liked Tori's conversation with Zach when Zach found out about the radio. I thought that was a good conversation because it was
cool.
there was like a lot of like caring there, but then Zach also had the moment of like, don't fuck around,
don't fuck with my husband.
Yeah, and then I like that we got to see that kind of with Derek too, with the like Derek is like, he was so nice and like calm throughout the entire thing, but the one time he did show an edge when he was like not even really even mean, but just very blunt, like, go the fuck over there and don't say anything. Like you know what I mean? So yeah. Okay, well, one final question for each of you before we stop, and I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Oh god.
Man. Who should go home tonight?
I want you to actually I'll just start. Emily.
Oh no, I'm scared. Oh god.
Or should I say Jenna Baker?
Yep.
You are telling your mom about everything that's been happening, and about your life and about the last events of the couple of days, and you're just having this conversation, and you get to the point where you say kind of the wrapping up statement of like what this all means to you and what's going to happen moving forward. What does Jenna say to her mom in that moment?
You said this is like a couple days after the Superstore.
Yeah. And not the whole conversation, like the conversation's happened, but like how did Jenna kind of like, the end of the conversation where Jenna's like, but you know what, I learned this, and this, and I think,
So, I don't know what's gonna happen.
You're muted, Michael, if you said something.
I just muttered, what I learned at boating school is...
Yeah! Yes.
So I don't know what's gonna happen now, but all the most of the most important people are safe, and you're safe, and Tori's safe, and Morgan's safe, and the boys are safe, and I'm trying not to overthink the rest of it too much right now.
Amazing.
And she would just like hug her.
Oh,
amazing.
I love Jenna.
Zach. It's about 6 months after everything that happened, and as you are sitting in your room, because you wouldn't really tell your emotions to anybody other than maybe Derek and maybe Maggie, but one day you just kind of find yourself rocking one of your children, as you're in their nursery, rocking back and forth, and you just start telling them about the 48 hours that changed your life. And in the same vein for Jenna, what is the thing that Zach kind of just says while he's looking at his child there at the end
Oh
of
my
all of
God.
that?
Jesus.
It's not
We
that
are
deep, but
unwell.
Oh my God.
Listen, it's the remains. I gotta throw you.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if I can say. I don't know if I can do this in his voice because I don't think it'd be an out loud thing. But I do think it's a lot of. It was the most challenging 48 hours that he's had in a long time. He's had very challenging days before this. But I think he does feel guilty I think he does feel guilt about that his life at this point is way better than it has been. Because he knows that he's very conscious that isn't the case. I think I think he had a shitty running joke with Derek of like, when is Morgan gonna like?
Oh my God.
What's up with Morgan? And I think like I think he's very conscious about what's going on there. But he's carrying that a lot with him. But having this family has meant more to him than he could ever describe and wish for. I did message this in the group afterwards, but I do think that it's what he has always really wanted. And I do think within the year that they do take Maggie up on her surrogacy offer, to have a genetic Williams-Gavin child, because the twins are Williams-Gavins, 100%. But ultimately
Bio baby.
Yeah. What he is really hoping for is that, maybe not so much hoping for. He's extremely beyond happy that he's able to have these kids in his life, while also being very cognizant of this is a very difficult world, and choosing to have kids is rough because it could go very, very badly. Yeah, I think for him it's a little bit of a mixed bag, because on the one hand he has this family, but it's always going to be in the back of his mind. I think if Nick were to ever show his face again, it wouldn't be a total surprise for Zach, because he's always going to have that slight nihilistic view of things.
For sure, yeah.
Of course I can't have this and this.
He's
so
in,
I think
he's in his Ellie at the farmhouse face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really, which is why when I said at the finale, like the orchard that he really wants to build, that's kind of where I was taking inspiration from.
Amazing.
But yeah, I think he'll, as long as he lives, because he now has kids, eventually 3 kids, I think he'll always be waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah. Amazing.
I would love to see a comedy though of this, like if it was a sitcom and it was like Three's Company with Maggie, Derek, and Zach, and it's like a post-apocalyptic attempt at IVF, and it's like, how do we do it?
I have thought about that, of like the logistics of like how that would work.
Like,
yeah. I mean, I thought like one of my first thoughts was like formula. How do we get formula?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Jenna or Morgan, I did it during
every time.
I did it
every single time.
Morgan,
already.
Do you mind reading your last diary entry for me?
Okay, so I did journal. I'm saying this to anybody who's watching. I told everybody, I was like, I gotta get this out, and I like after the last session, journaled as Morgan, and it's little snippets. So like they're entries, but they would be like entries in like a more full. So I can just read the most chunkiest one if you want.
Yeah, sure.
I wrote, oh god. No, why does this feel
You
so
don't have to do
vulnerable?
this if you don't want to.
No, I want to, because
Okay.
I think it's funny. Also, like, why are we all emotional masochists? So I said, Wes has been distant lately. He's still here. He's great with the boys. Once we got cleaned up, we tried to, be together. But I don't know if it's ever going to be the same. He went through hell, and we went through hell to get him back. But I don't know if he'll ever fully make it back. Hell, maybe I'll never fully make it back. I've been out riding with Jenna a few times just to give myself some breathing room after helping Zach with all the women going through withdrawals. She's been distant too lately. I know she's busy reconnecting with her mom and sister, which, God, she deserves to do after all this time. But I guess I just miss her is all. And I don't know why, but lately I get nervous every time I see Maggie and Jenna together.
Amazing. And just so that you kind of have a chance to as well. Let's imagine that. I think it would be kind of poignant that Jenna's talking to Theo a few days after everything that has happened, and they're just kind of, reeling from the events. How do you think Morgan would kind of wrap up everything if she could in one sentence?
Like within that few days.
Yeah.
First instinct is that she knows that she should be caring for her family. And she knows she should be like in that journal entry of like, she knows she should be supporting Wes. Like, he was, tortured essentially. And, she wants to make sure that he's healthy and comfortable. But like, she wants to know what's going on with like, Jenna's mom's back. And, that's been like a really important thing to Jenna this whole time that we've been at Blue Valley. And, she has a sibling now that lives with us, and Zach has a sibling that lives with us. And she said that one thing about being a lesbian, and that was really interesting. I wonder if I could talk to her a little bit, maybe about.
You stay away from my sister.
I'm not trying to. And then maybe like Vicky could like talk to me about some stuff, like not do anything. Like, none of this is to like have relations, but just like say feelings out loud, because like I think a part of Morgan is like scared of herself. And you made me at the very end, when you were like, what is that about? Or like, what would Morgan do? And me as Angie knows exactly what Angie would do.
Yeah.
But like I don't think Morgan would for a while.
Yeah.
She's a fucking Virgo.
Yeah.
And she wants all the information before she makes a move. And so I think she would kind of be half in, half out in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all for joining this talk back. Before we go, I'm going to give a little bit of a sneak peek as to how the Remains is going to continue, because we announced that this was season 1, so we are going to have a season 2 tentatively in January. Be on the lookout on our social media. But in order to before we head out, well, first, like I said, I just kind of want to say thank you again for watching. Thank you for everybody for joining. But I'm going to leave you kind of just with this little narrative visual.
Oh, stop.
We see rustling of papers down cracked pavement. We see wind blowing over a sidewalk with growth coming out of it. Then, all of a sudden, a whoosh of wind, and the papers fly up again. And then you hear... You hear talking. What looked to be an abandoned sidewalk is covered with people. Cars going to and fro, traffic, people yelling, screaming at each other. The visual kind of zooms out as you see buildings. Tons of buildings, people just kind of walking to and fro, populous, events, a nice, bright, shiny day. As we zoom out further, and you see the very familiar skyline of Manhattan. And right at the bottom of the screen, we see the letters, or the words, September 26th, 2013. Because that is where and when Season 2 of The Remains is going to be taking place.
Why do I feel just as excited after hearing that as watching the trailer for the HBO series?
So, Season 2 of The Remains is going to be somewhat of a prequel, I guess. That is going to be, it's going to take place, it is going to be a 4-session long season that is going to take place over the first 4 days of the outbreak. So that is what we're going to be doing. However, do not despair. We will be returning to Blue Valley. We will be returning to these characters as well.
Oh my god.
But that will be in a future season, as this next season is going to be a little bit different. So that's just your little sneak peek. I just want to say to my players that this was, like I said, a very heavy role play thing. You guys tackled important conversations and showed trust and love. And as long as you have people who are willing to do that with you in a safe space, then, you know, you can tell some pretty cool stories. And I think that we did. So thank you for joining me on this crazy ride. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for Season 2 of The Remains. Thank you to my players, the best players a GM can ask for, and as always, everybody say bye!
Bye!
Bye.
Bye.